Well, I want to welcome you guys all again to our little hypnosis discussion group. Um, what I'm going to talk about now. First of all, I have a document that I am going to send in our group chat. That is sort of the foundation of what we're doing here. Hopefully, let me see, make sure. And let's see, it's not working the way it's supposed to. Oh, here we go. All right. So all that I'm doing here is, and I've talked about this before, this is about using the Chase Hughes 6-axis model of influence, specifically in this case, for how to use this to get your hypnosis clients really responsive and get the most success possible. This is going to be eventually added to my operations manual. And for those who aren't familiar with my operations manual, it is the essential manual that I use to run my business. Up to this point, I have made my manual available free of charge to anyone who asks. And I will still make it free of charge. The condition has changed, however. I'm simply not going to send it to you if you email me. We are going to have some conversation, either through phone or through Google Meets or Zoom. But I just want to make sure that I know the people who I'm sharing this with. And basically, even a 15-minute conversation is going to be enough to know that who I'm working with, and we'll go from there. But for those who I've shared it with, it is, and who are building their hypnosis practice for it, it's been very essential. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about the 6-axis model of influence. And what I want to briefly, if you have Chase Hughes operations manual or perhaps the ellipsis manual, it describes this in some very good detail. But I'm going to just briefly describe it and then go through how it's applied. There are 6 different qualities that when someone has really sort of is experiencing these, when you sort of activate these qualities in somebody, they make them very malleable to suggestions. And there are 6 of them. However, you really only need 3 to get. And I figure, well, why not just do all of them at once? And what I've done essentially is, in this document, you'll read it, I'll talk about how I activate each of those. Now, these 6 processes, these 6 models, axes of influence are expectancy, focus, openness, connection, compliance, and lastly, suggestibility. The qualities of compliance and suggestibility are not easily implemented through language patterns, but I'll describe how you can implement these. There are some behavioral methods that I'll talk about in a moment. The interesting thing about this is, as I describe these, and these again, I borrow, if not directly steal from Chase Hughes, is doing this is incredibly simple. It takes an incredibly short amount of time, but you cannot overestimate the results of it. So essentially, to do this, there are several ways to do it. There is one that's called, well, let's start simply with expectancy. Expectancy is a state of anticipation, a feeling of excitement or eagerness. And the best way to start building this sense of expectancy in a client or potential client is at the very first interaction. You tell them it's going to be great at the end of this. In fact, I'll just read what I've written here. You tell them you're going to do great at this. You're going to look back on this and know you did something great. If a newly scheduled client expresses excitement, you build on it and you tell them that's exactly the state of mind that's going to help you. So you're reinforcing their sense of expectancy. Likewise, when you start the session, asking how they're doing, if they're feeling excited, you say, it is exciting, isn't it? And so through this, you're just in a very short amount of time building their sense of excitement and expectancy. And the important thing about this is congruency. As you describe the sense of excitement, it's important you demonstrate that sense of excitement as well. So we've dealt first with expectancy. The states that lend themselves very easily to language patterns are focus, openness, and connection. And you do this through a process. There are 3 different processes that I recommend. The first process is called positive association, where you're helping the person see themselves. Let's deal with openness, for example. You're helping the person see themselves as someone who is open. And you do this in a very simple conversational manner. You would say something to the effect of, you can imagine there are a lot of people out there who go to a hypnotist and think they're just going to sit down and the hypnotist is going to be like a magician doing something to them. But they don't have that sense of openness to really have the great results. Now, when you make that description, obviously you're pointing away from someone else, and they are internally saying, okay, I am not that person. So this is called negative dissociation. They're disassociating themselves away from the negative. Likewise, you can do the very same thing, but what's called positive association. And with positive association, they're associating themselves with someone who is open. The language pattern would sound something like, when you meet one of those amazing people who are really open, you sort of know it because they are so willing to just put aside their judgment to really get what they want. And again, you're describing this as something positive, and you don't even have to say anything more than that. If they nod their head and understand, they're internally associating themselves with someone who is open. The very last of these 3 processes you can do linguistically is simply called the complement. And you simply say, how is it you are able to just be so open? Now, I really admire that in people. And you let them talk. And it is very seldom, it is very rare you're going to see someone who says, oh, I'm not an open person at all, because that openness is seen as a benefit. Okay, so we've just dealt with openness. Now, these same processes work with the process of connection. So if you've read in the operations manual, what's called the voice of experience, it's a part of an induction. I've added to that, when you create this internal voice, and you tell them that you feel deeply connected to this voice. And if they're looking at you and you say that, you point to your mouth. You feel deeply connected to this voice. So that's a way of associating it. If you're using the positive association, you could say something like this. There are some really amazing people, and they just seem to really deeply connect with almost instantly, you feel as if you know this person. With me as a hypnotist, it's amazing how that can really create something positive. So again, you're positively associating this feeling of connection. The negative disassociation, again, you're creating someone who you would not want to associate with, who can't connect with people. And it would sound something like this. We've all met someone who would rather look at you with disgust than even take a second to connect. The people who can't connect seem always to be worse off. Now think about if someone were to say that to you, you don't want to be someone who cannot connect. And again, going back to the third part of the compliment, and this is something you can do conversationally to a barista in a coffee shop. You can, yeah, 1 second, Keith, I'll be with you in a second. The compliment sounds simply like, I saw you working with your associate. I have to compliment you on how you're able to connect with people in such a short amount of time. It's really amazing. And again, they start to create this sense of connection. So, okay, Keith, did you have any questions? If anyone wants to, you can raise your hand or speak up. There's a button here that allows you to ask questions by raising your hand. Keith, I heard you speak. Okay, you muted yourself. Okay, Keith. Okay. Anyone else have any observations? Okay. So we have dealt with expectancy. We've dealt with, I don't know, did we cover focus? Because focus is exactly the same thing. You compliment them on how amazingly you can focus on somebody. Or you associate them with, I've met some people who do the job that you do, and the quality of focus they have is just incredible. Okay. Tyrone, you had a question. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, a lot of what you teach, I always try to apply to what I do because I'm not a practicing hypnotist. You know, I work in sales and call center environment, but I know a lot of what you teach can be applied to that. So in the beginning, like if I'm talking to and you could just tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Sure.
A lot of times when I'll speak with someone about what I'm selling, they might have had a bad experience with someone in the past on this. You know, I've been burned before, so I'm kind of skeptical. So if they say something like this in the beginning, I try to frame their expectation by saying something like, okay, so I know you had a bad experience in the past, so I know you said you're kind of skeptical. And I would tell them, well, I love speaking with someone like you that's skeptical because I know that because you are skeptical, you're going to focus in on everything I have to say in this conversation.
Yeah.
And they'll say, yeah,
And
that's right.
compliment and encourage that focus. Yeah, I really want you to focus in on this. I really appreciate the focus you're giving to this. So there, you've covered the focus right there. Yeah.
Okay, so
Anything
that's
else? Yeah.
yeah, no, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I might even say to them,
Okay.
well, even if you decide not to work with me, I still want this to be a positive conversation where you gain so much more clarity about your problem than before you got on the call.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to set that expectation of the conversation.
All right, that's perfect. And you also add into that, I would add into that uh, connection. At the very least, I want you to feel some sort of connection with someone with us talking here. I can really be able to communicate to you. And regardless of what you decide, I want to know that we've connected and you have some good information here. So,
Okay,
and
yeah.
again, all you have to do is get 3 of these 6 things and people will follow along. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyrone. Graham.
No, you actually made the point for us. I was going to say when Tyrone was saying to his potential clients about, I know you've been burnt for and you're very skeptical. I was just going to reiterate the point that he's actually at the same time building that connection with them as well. And I would also possibly venture that he might be doing a bit of suggestibility with them as well by saying, like, I'm suggesting that you're rightfully skeptic and I'm validating that for you. And I think, oh, like, to again reinforce the connection. So he's like going around in a little axis loop, so to speak, going from one to the other, to the other, to the other. So to use an analogy that Chase Hughes did with a podcast that I watched on him recently with David Breek, he was saying that if you imagine that each of the axes is a bottle that can be filled, and you go around just filling each bottle up a bit at a time and a bit at a time until they start to overflow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It works. It works perfectly. So as far as dealing with compliance and suggestibility, it's difficult to compliment somebody on, you're very compliant. Yeah, that feels weird. And likewise, compliment them on the suggestibility. However, I did have this conversation with Alex, and Alex pointed out that he compliments them on their receptiveness, which you can do. The receptiveness implies a sense of suggestibility and openness. So that's really good. Now let's take out the linguistic parts of that, because we're dealing with compliance and suggestibility. The way that I work that into my conversation with my clients is through, first of all, clear instructions and then behavioral entrainment. The behavioral entrainment is there to get the compliance. The behavioral entrainment is basically telling them what to do. If they're sitting in a chair, I say, sit with your back supported, feet flat on the floor, and you're just giving them very simple instructions. And I start behavioral entrainment at the moment I schedule the appointment. I say, go to your calendar, go to this date at that time, put that hour aside. And I shut up, just so that they know I'm waiting for them to do it. And that's just getting them used to following instructions. Likewise, during the session, it's all full of compliance. Even when you go back to my mentors, Jeff Stevens, he would always tell somebody, at the very least, move forward, sit up straight, then take a deep breath. All of these are instructions that they follow to get them used to being compliant. If you are familiar with the voice of experience pattern, the voice of experience induction, it's in the manual. There's a whole list of simple compliance. Take a deep breath, close your eyes. With your eyes closed, left, right, and down, then up. And so all of this is just getting them used to following instructions. And The last part is on suggestibility. I do this by just the very briefest sort of pre-talk before I start the voice of experience induction. It's a modification of what Jeff Stevens taught me, but it's simply like this. All you have to do is follow my instructions. That simply means that when I tell you what to focus on, focus completely. Don't think about it. Don't hesitate. Don't even wonder if you're doing it right. Understood? And I nod my head. When I ask you, imagine as if it's absolutely real. I occasionally will ask you to nod your head so I know you're following along. I may go very fast, and that's sort of to build their anticipation. I may go very fast, so follow along. Are you ready? And I wait for their head nod or they're saying, okay. Then I'll go right into the instructions there. Now, what I have done since I've implemented this is every session that I have, like for example, I'll have, I have my that's their name. And I have on each session, I've just written down connection, openness, expectancy, and I just want to get 3 checks, at least 3 checks. If I can get more 3 checks in this conversation, and again, I don't use more than 10 or 15 before the hypnosis starts. And you can squeeze these in very quickly, very easily with every session. And so I simply made a habit of trying to get as many checks, at least 3, with everyone I work with on every session. And don't underestimate the power, because these are brief, don't underestimate their power in doing that. I want to encourage that. Okay, so let's, that's the essence of my contribution here. Does anyone have any questions, any observations? Yes, Graham.
Yeah, one that just occurred to us when you said about trying to get as many ticks as possible. Would there be a danger of overloading them with so many words, trying to hit each of those axes as many as possible, so that eventually they just literally have a brain freeze and they just go, I've just heard so much, I'm going to switch off completely?
If you do it with, no, I don't think so, personally. You as the hypnotist have to get comfortable doing this. So all of this demands a certain quality of confidence that you know what you're doing. And if you go with an even pace, if you compliment them on these things, if you do the negative disassociation or the positive association, you're going to get a good result. And just keep in mind, to get someone to do anything, you only need 3 of these things. But if you can get 4, 5, 6 of them, they're going to be very, very responsive. Okay. But that's a good question.
Yeah.
And yeah. All right. Anybody else?
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Before, like me personally, before I get on the phone call, which I guess would be the same as before you guys start a session with someone, does expectation start in the mind, like with you first, even before you meet your client?
I think so. I think the very first thing you have to do is feel a deep care and affection for the person you're talking with, and recognize, just like everybody else, they're hiding some sort of internal injury, so they They have these social guards up that to keep them safe and protected. But once you recognize that, it gets very easy to pass their defenses. And again, this is one of the chief rules that Chase Hughes talks about, which is you first recognize everybody is suffering, and everyone has to put on a mask in order to look like they're not suffering, and then they have to pretend that everyone else is normal. But once you do that, it makes you how you start much different and much more compassionate, much more open. Does that answer your question, Tyrone?
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you correctly, like you would think about that or review that in your mind before you start your session, so you know exactly how to focus on that person.
Right. And if you suspect someone is going to be defensive because they have been injured in the past, you just acknowledge it. You just let them know, I completely understand, and for what it's worth, let's put that aside. I'm just here to give you information. So that's how I would deal with it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. Anybody else? Okay.
Any good non-linguistic
back.
approaches?
Non-linguistic approaches. The non-linguistic approaches are first the behavioral entrainment. That gets them familiar with following instructions. So you do have to say the words, but it's not like a language pattern. You just have to give them instructions and get them comfortable with that. And likewise, if you're able to give clear instructions and tell them what to do, and they understand it, again, language is involved, but it's not so much a language pattern. I hope that satisfies that.
Yep.
Another thing you can do completely non-linguistically is, if you are a hypnotist, make your environment like zero in on what it's like to be hypnotized. So make it a complete environment with no distractions. Make it full of expectancy. I had a friend who was a hypnotist. He had a whole wall of people smiling who were his clients, of just pictures of people. And if he wanted to, he could just take you by and say, this guy did this, and this guy did this, and this guy did this. So he builds the expectancy early on. All right. Any other questions, observations? All right.
This guy did this guy did this, and sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. All he did is he raised his hand. He touched his head to the forehead, and his head went down, and sleep. Yeah, exactly. Graham, did you have a question?
Yeah, yes, and it's actually tied in with what Chase is going to be doing his little lecture on this evening about the fate model. I'm wondering if there's any way that the fate model could be maybe tied in with the six-axis model of influence.
I'll give you a heads up on that. And I heard in an interview, a podcast with Chase, he said, the fate model is the hardware. This is all mammals respond to the fate model.
Yeah.
But the six-axis model is the human software. That's a really brilliant understanding of it. So all mammals respond to the fate model, and humans respond to the fate model, but it has the software of the six-axis model on top of it. So yeah.
Yeah, because you were saying that the fate model is more for the ancestral part of the brain, sort of like the mammalian brain, as I said, for you can copy and paste it from a dog onto somebody else, sort of thing. And the thought occurs to me that if, as we're getting them so super relaxed, that we're going to bypass the critical factors and the neocortex sort of thing,
Yeah.
and go right to the inner mind, would maybe somehow tying in with the fate model speak more to that part of the brain, perhaps?
Well, the fate model requires focus, authority. It's tribal, and what's the last part?
Emotion.
Emotions, yes. So, and again, every mammal responds to those four things. Humans, because we have now this linguistic neocortex and a slightly more complicated communication system, that becomes the software we respond to, and that becomes the six-axis model. But use both. I mean, you have one is built on top of the other.
Because I'm thinking, like, especially with things like, with phobias and anxieties and things like that, which can be quite emotional based, if you can actually get straight into that emotional, because I mean, we'll have them focused on the breathing and relaxation. The authority will be coming as we guide them into it. Not too sure how much we can work in the tribal, but if it's a case of like dealing with like fears or anxieties and that sort of thing, then it's quite nailed onto it.
Yeah.
I wonder if that'd be a 2 out of the 4 would be enough.
It's certainly worth looking into. I think you're on the right track. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any last questions or observations? Okay. This has been really good. Anyone else who's listening, say that when this goes up on YouTube, if you are interested in getting my operations manual for my hypnosis business, contact me so we can have some communication and we'll talk and we'll go from there. And we'll do this again next week. You guys sacrificed some time to be here, and because you're here, you're not somewhere else. So thank you very much for making that sacrifice. I am eager to talk with you again next week. Let's pause for a moment, because I think next week is not going to happen. So November 21st will not happen. It is going to be a service for my mother who died last Wednesday. So it will be one after that. Okay.
No, that's understandable, David. And thanks again for putting this on, especially, so soon after hearing the sad news of your mother passing. It's really appreciated that you can still take the time to put this on for us all. It's really appreciated, mate.
For what it's worth, she was 94. She started riding a Harley Davidson motorcycle at the age of 71. And her last ride of her motorcycle, she parked it in the storage facility, and that's when she tripped on a curb and first injured herself. And that was 2 years prior to her death. So it all sort of declines from there. All right, guys. Thank you so much. You guys have been great. We'll talk.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, David.
Thank you much, guys.